for a motion to approve?
I motion.
Second.
Right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, audience items. Okay. All right, and then we have Bridget with RBTV. Anyone have any questions for her on that? It will be on Monday, September 9th, set up, starting at 6 a.m. Yes, and then the actual event will start at 3 to 11 and tear down by Tuesday at noon.
This is where you plug any volunteers.
I know. I'm not seeing them all there.
Oh,
What are some of the things going on then?
So we are just at the beginning planning stages. Obviously, the festival in a few weeks is taking a priority. But it's kind of going to be divided up into 3 sections. They arrive into town by about 11 o'clock in the morning, and we'll do a big entrance into town. Somehow we haven't figured out exactly what to do yet. But we are going to play off the amenities that we have with the lake and the golf course that morning. We'll have a lunch at Papa's with the crew, and then they are going to be doing the Murph and Andy show from Cup Insurance in their windows there while we set up the square. 3:30 to 7:30 is going to be like the Cyhawk challenges or games kind of sort of thing. And then 7:30 to 10:30 we're going to have a band. As you can see on there, the setup is going to be similar to the festival. We'll have the big tent on 2nd Street. That's why I'm needing to close it off so early. In the park will be vendors, nonprofits, businesses, that sort of thing that want to have booths. That's what the park mostly
Will they
is.
use the same snow fencing that we use for the square? That will have to be.
Probably on a smaller scale. It really is set up to the festival, but on a smaller scale.
Wednesday, I had a business owner approach and ask if we could make the entire area that's closed off alcohol,
I know.
so that when people are leaving the pub, or they can carry. And
Yeah, that's something I talked to Trace about.
I figured.
They've asked us that as far as.
Okay.
The businesses are all aware of it. I've had great response from businesses wanting to be involved. Volunteers, obviously. So we're the kickoff day of the Cyhawk, so it'll be their first stop in their series that week.
And Mayor and Bridget have been attending the other cities in the North Polk community to, not to steal your thunder, but to get them involved, because it's we want it to be a North Polk event, not just a Polk City event. So, like the high school bands, football teams, the cheerleaders, trying to get, Dr. Dan Mart's involved in it, because that'll be, school won't have been in session too terribly long, but.
Yeah. So we spoke at Elkhart City Council a few weeks ago, and the businesses there were in support of it. A couple of them wanted sponsor, be involved on our square, and then I'm going to Sheldall tonight, and then we're also going to Alderman next Monday night, and then we will approach the school board once we have the support of all 3 or 4 city councils. Then we'll approach the school board about having the school board. Because as Jenny said, I really want it to be a North Polk community event. Sounds fun.
all right. Anyone else have any questions? All right, do we have a motion to approve the usage of the square on September 9th through Tuesday at 10? A motion to.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, motion carried. Okay, we have a motion to approve, or recommend to council to approve North Polk United Soccer Class C Sports Complex starting August 5th through November 9th.
I'll see Greg here, so I'm assuming this is for just their normal.
It is.
Yeah.
fall meeting.
I mean, it's all the same stuff he submits every fall and spring.
Yes, he doesn't, I mean, obviously they haven't finished registration yet, but based on just numbers, it sounds like it's gonna be about the same. So that's why the dates and times and practices and things he's assuming will be the same.
Great, do we have a motion to approve?
I motion to approve.
Okay. Second. Great, all in favor? Motion carried. Great, and then our September meeting falls on the 2nd, so we would like to just recommend to change that to September 3rd. Just a motion to approve that. Second. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. All right, and then our future meet and greet, we were looking at Tuesday, September 3rd during our meeting time for that. Do you know, has there been anything on the city side?
No, I had actually mentioned it to Bridget, but her hands are a little full in September for the RVTV, but I thought that would probably be a good plan to partner with the chamber. After I kind of reviewed what, Ankeny does and what some of the other communities do, it seems like they heavily rely on the businesses to sponsor whatever the event is. So that's something that we could do. It could just simply be a get out. I mean, we don't have to necessarily have, I think somebody had suggested, popsicles in the park or something. It could just be park visit, the first time around to see what kind of attendance, because it's going to take some time to get people to, I can put it out on Facebook and but it's really kind of up to you guys. What do you want it to look like? And that's why the discussion item, perfect world, what do we want? And then how are we going to get there? Because obviously it's going to take steps. The first event, your attendance is going to grow. It's similar to what I've seen the library morph into. The first few times they did a movie night, there were like 20 people there. The last time they did movie night, there were 140 people there. So part of that is, Facebook world, flyers, just kind of word of mouth. So something to keep in mind, it'll probably grow substantially. So if you start, with one project, then what do you want the next one to be? It could be a partnership with the police department. If park has electricity, depends on what park you want to do it at. I think, were you guys thinking Lost Lakes Park? Or where were you thinking? Which park? We'd have to identify.
Yeah, we were, I think, kind of open and then kind of went back to the squares would be a good place to start parking and things like that. But I think, I would still be a different location.
Okay. And that's fine.
Yeah.
The direction for you guys, if you want to do the square, obviously there's electricity there, there's water, there's access to bathrooms. So those are kinds of things you need to think about, depending on how long the event is. If it's a half an hour, you're probably okay without a bathroom, but you start extending that, you're going to want to take that into consideration. If there's electricity, we could potentially partner with the police station. I know they are doing movie night in the neighborhoods where they go to like a garage door and whatnot. They were also looking at getting a screen. So it could be Parks Commission and the police station, or or even the library. Parks Commission and the library will be at the square on this night. There is so RVTV is the 9th, and there's the Sounds on the Square is the first weekend in August, right?
It's August 2nd, and that was going to be, with that art event is already there, if that's something that you would want to set up a table, do, whatever too, that would be, then you already have those people there, hopefully, by the meeting.
I haven't had very good luck with that this year. Those are kind of some of the ideas, and then who's the volunteers, and something that Becky and I were talking about, the library has the Friends of the Library, so they have this 501(c) organization. Police have a police association. The city doesn't really have one of those. There's no Friends of the city that just donate money, right? And so it has to come from somewhere. So where's that going to be? And I mean, what you guys are talking about is minimal investment too, but just something to consider as we go forward with whether it's personnel to be there on site, whether it's just trying to get people to attend the parks meeting. The only downfall with that is if there's no parks agenda item, then there may not be a September parks meeting, right?
Well, I thought we were also going to discuss Polk City, kind of bring what they want. Like, I know that we didn't want to, like, lay it out there because we don't have a budget. Wasn't that something we wanted to do?
I think all of our ideas, we kind of just kept going round and round in different ways. So, another idea I had is if sometimes we feel like we can't answer the questions people have, that if it should be something where we invite some of the other commissions too, like I don't know all the planning and zoning commission members or something like that. Like, do we have it be kind of a city commission open house at a park type thing? Or my thoughts too on location. I think everyone in the community knows the square, so then maybe we do just jump into a different location that not everyone highlight something that we would have to kind of go after that neighborhood biscuit. So I think it really does just depend on what everyone wants to see it.
I know back before Becky was doing the parks meetings and I was doing them, it was more of a, we're holding the parks meeting in a park so that we could get attendance, but then it was still only the parks commission. So the nice thing was it allowed commission members that were from, say, the Marina Cove area to see the linear park. It's a park you maybe not go to, so you would get more familiar with the amenities. But from what Becky shared with me on kind of the conversations that you guys have had, was you're really trying to get the community more involved in not only coming out and experiencing the different parks, but in, wish list items, what do you want? And that's where I go back to that, it would be really nice if there was some sort of an organization. I think of the PTA. I think of how much work the PTA did to raise money to help build a playground at West. Even though the school has a bond and even though we pay taxes, those are for the necessities, not necessarily the wish list items. And so the PTA helped immensely in making that happen. It's kind of the same thing with city funding, right? We have taxpayers pay, but that has to pay for streets and water and fire and police and all those kinds of things. So by the time we get to all those wish list items, there might not be the funds available. The police stations had that issue, the fire stations had that issue, and so that's kind of where some of that comes in. Also, I think it's good to educate the public that a park doesn't necessarily mean playground. There are lots of parks that are just green space, or there's parks that are, a sit and you got benches, and it's more of that. I have Wi-Fi, so I'm working on my homework or my work assignment or whatever while my kids are playing. So a lot of times, I know Lost Lake specifically, when everyone moved in and there's a park and there's going to be all this stuff, there was this expectation. The playground's going to be there now. And that's the hard part. We don't have the businesses like Ankeny does. I mean, you go to any of the Miracle Park or any of the parks that have a lot of things in them, you can look and see how much somebody donated by the size of those plaques. The bigger the plaque, the more money they donate is kind of the rule. Kind of like the Friends bricks, right? In front of the library, there's all these bricks with names. Those are all the people that have donated money to buy books or create the Adventure Pass program, those kinds of things. And so that's hard for Polk City because we don't have that commercial base that we can go to a bank, we can go to a large corporation, and they're donating, we want our name in this park or whatnot. So that's a challenge as well. And I think just talking about it openly helps people understand it's not just as simple as, well, I pay taxes, so this is what I want.
And we did talk about having kind of sign that had, like, this is the average cost of this ground equipment. And then also having donation forms available. And I feel like it's hard to know where to go with that if we leave it open-ended in park, if we start off.
Well, and there are rules about donations, so I don't know that you can donate directly to the city. So there would have to be some sort of a 501(c) organization.
Like an arbor board or something?
Yes, so,
I would probably suggest the Polk City Foundation.
Yes.
And that's probably where John would,
send people.
yeah.
So, but that would be donating funds specifically for a project. And then I go back to the PTA just because that's the most recent example. I remember there being thermometers, and this is how much PTA has raised for this new playground. It helps people stay focused. So you could do roundup programs at Fairway, places people are already going. But again, we're going to have to partner with somebody like the Polk City Community Foundation to do that. But I think it's more of what is it, like the number one call that I get is for Lost Lake Park right now, just because that's the newest development. People ask a lot of times about pools, about splash pads, about those kinds of things, and that's going to be, much larger than just a donation project. That's going to take a bond referendum, and I just don't see that. I mean, after two failed ones, I know you guys have all heard this story, but after two failed ones, I don't know that mayor and council are too terribly excited to take another one to the public, because it was voted down quite substantially. I think 40% or something like that.
The rec area.
Yeah. And splash pads are not as intrusive as a pool as far as cost, but they're still pretty costly just for the infrastructure and then the management to keep them. I mean, there's all these, everything has rules when it's on public property.
It's really wasteful.
Yes.
They can't use that water.
Right.
So it's super wasteful.
Yeah. I know. And so it's all kind of a personal preference. And so, maybe, and that's why we have it on here as an item to talk about it, because you guys, you're the commission, so you kind of get to say, this is what we want to do. This is how we are going to accomplish it. Right. And it can be, outside of the first Monday of the month at 6:00. So
I think that maybe there's a couple there, but like one of the things that we need, I think, as commission members is a better understanding of the city budget and how it pertains, or at least we need somebody else there to help people understand it. We don't feel prepared to talk about a lot of those things. We don't understand planning and zoning decisions and how it's decided what's green space and what's not green space and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
We either need help learning that, or if we do something like this, support of others that would know about this kind of talk. So I don't know how that fits in this, if that's a separate learning experience for all of us, or we would do something, or how we do it.
we've done work sessions with P&Z specific to certain zoning things. That's a possibility of work session idea, to find the proper people to talk about those things. All of what you just said is in my wheelhouse because I deal with that stuff every day. The budget is a very long process that starts, so fiscal year started July 1. The budgeting process for July of 2020 will be starting in another month. And that process is all the different department heads that come together. They say, these are my needs. A new fire truck. I need to replace a public works truck. This is an anticipated, our water capacity is going to grow. I'm going to need another public works person because we've added X number of miles of road. Those are the kinds of things they come with. And they say, okay, council, this is what I need. And then there's the finite amount of estimated revenue. And then council gets to go, well, you can have that, but you can't have this, and you can have this, but you can't have that. And they go through multiple work sessions to get down to, okay, this is a budget that balances. And the thing about local government is you can't take money from water revenue and use it on streets. It's very specific on how the government funding is allowed. If it comes in for water, it has to go back out for water. If it comes in from street tax, it has to go back out to repairing streets. So a little different than our household budgets or a corporate budget where revenue is revenue, it's money. I can spend it on whatever I want. So that's part of it.
Sounds like we're gonna base off of like donation fundraising.
I mean, it's the easier thing for council to do at any point in time is if, let's just say, a playground's going to cost $200,000. If somebody comes with $50,000, it just makes it that much easier to figure out how many, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I don't know that any of the city council members would expect it to be 100% fundraiser by any means, but it just helps. You know, kind of like the K-9. I mean, you guys all were here during that process. There wasn't a K-9, so there was no budget for a K-9. So this police association was created, and they started doing the fundraising to basically say, okay, this is how much the community's invested in it. They want a K-9. So then council approved, okay, we're going to have a K-9, and this is what the budget's going to be. It still helps with training and the fundraising, and it helps with all different kinds of things. But that was kind of the get the ball rolling, if that makes sense. Help yourself, kind of thing. So, council, what they're going to want the most is what are the priorities of the parks? Okay, so you have your wish list, right? In a perfect world, tomorrow we'd go out and we'd write a check and we'd finish every park we own. Well, that's not feasible. So what is the number one thing you want to see happen in 2020 is really what you've got to, and then work your way backwards. Then if there's any money left, then this is what we'd like to see, or this is what we'd like to see. And the hard part is you have 3 or 4 people that talk to you that say, I'd really like a dog park. Then you think you find a place for a dog park, and then you have 3 or 4 people that live there that go, no, I don't want one. Not in my backyard. And I mean, I've seen all kinds of things on different social media pages where people in Polk City really want a dog park. Okay, but where are we going to put it? Who is going to agree to have it in their backyard? And Ankeny has a dog park, but it's in a commercially zoned area, and they've got acres and acres of land. How they came to own that land, I'm not privy to, but it made it a little easier versus putting it in somebody's backyard. So that's the challenge you guys are going to be faced with is you each probably have your ideas about your own neighborhoods because that's who talks to you, right? And maybe start there for the folks that live in Marina Cove or the folks that live in 12 Oaks or live in Lost Lakes. What do they want to see there? We put up a structure and no playground in 12 Oaks because we had people in 12 Oaks tell us that's what they wanted, a natural, more habitat fishing thing. And then we were told, no, we don't like the way it looks. We would have rather had a playground. So you're always going to have a little bit of that. And that's the only reason I caution having a suggestion board because your suggestions may come in very heavily weighted one direction, but it only represents, 3% of the population that actually live there next to that park. And so that's the challenge, getting people to come to these meetings. Hey, we're going to have and maybe that's a simple thing. We're going to have a meeting and we're going to talk specifically about what we're going to do in Lost Lakes Park. Come to the meeting, talk about it, tell us what you want, but then you have 2 people show up. So those are the challenges that I think all local governments are faced with. It's not unique to Polk City. I mean, I talk to other city clerks across the metro areas, and they're all faced with the same challenges. Feedback comes in typically after somebody doesn't like something, not because they want, because they like what was happening. So really, you guys are the drivers of the information.
Sounds like everyone wants a playground.
In Lost Lakes, yes. Yes.
So,
Yes.
One idea that was brought up last meeting was the parks passport. And I liked that idea just in the sense of just promoting the green space even that we have. I mean, everybody instantly thinks of a playground or a park as, I need a playground and a new slide, new equipment. But we do have lots of beautiful, beautiful space here in the city. So maybe having a parks passport would be, we could tie that into activities or an event or, partner with different businesses in town. But we could just basically have it be kind of a traveling experience where it could be just a couple times a year. It might be once a month for a certain amount of time, but we would kind of invite people to show up, and they would, kids and families would be able to come. They'd be able to see new space that they maybe haven't even seen before, and see how maybe we organize something and utilize that space in a way that they haven't even thought of. So then the focus isn't so much always playground. Maybe it is, it is a great space to go and work outdoors if you want, or it is a great place to hold a birthday party, or just kind of open their eyes to what we have currently, or a new neighborhood that has an existing park and it's only 5 minutes away, and it's a nice bike ride, and there's a trail right here, and they had no idea. So maybe a parks passport would be a fun way of it. I don't know, showing the space that we do have. And then also during that time, we can have suggestions, we could have, I don't know, just informal conversations with people and kind of get feedback and gather ideas of what they're wanting.
We have Marina Cove, Leonard, the school playground, obviously, Miller. I mean, you've got the Morris Family Park that doesn't have actual playground equipment, but still has stuff for them to play on.
Right.
I think my kids would argue that they view it as a park.
Yeah.
They play on everything.
Right? So, it's perspective. And, an idea to spin off of that, I think it was the police that did kindness rocks a year ago. Wasn't it the police? And they painted these rocks, and they put them in different parks, and they basically got a little trinket or an award if they found the rock and returned it to the police station. Again, things like that get them out. That's the whole idea, right? You want to get people out and utilizing the space.
We gotta be realistic, though. Like, we can think, like a nice little green space sounds great, but then has no trees, and no one's ever gonna be at it because it's just dead hot, and there's no playground equipment, and it's just, kind of like Lost Lake Park right now. No one's there. If there's all the trees are in the
It's a great place to fly a kite.
Yeah, I mean, well,
That's
It's a great place to fly a kite.
Who's doing,
Well, I used to fly a kite in the middle of kind of down between Leonard Park and Morris Family Park when none of those houses were there, because I used to live kind of in the Crestmore or Lindale area, and we used to walk over to these empty lots that hadn't been sold or platted, and we'd fly our kite because there were no overhead power. So I mean, I get the heat, and nobody's going to be at any of our parks out today. Kickball, frisbee.
A lot of times people think you have to have equipment in order to use these parks. And yes, everybody wants equipment, but it would be nice to just kind of open their eyes to. And we have a lot of beautiful space and the things that you can do to get creative with it.
Yeah. Agreed.
I mean, if we invest trees, I think that, makes space more enjoyable.
Our dear investment in tree guy.
He's out. We're
I mean,
working on
I'm
it.
really outside right now in an empty playground flying kite in 90-degree weather.
No,
I mean, we those parks keep shade.
And you're right, Alan, it takes time. We plant trees, and I've got trees that were planted 20 years ago. We're finally providing some shade in the sports complex. That was 20 years ago.
We'll have to plant some poplars.
On the passport idea, if it's something that's over, May to August or September, there's a lot of weather in that case. So if it was fly a kite here, you can check that off at any time, not just our 1 week of hot.
Yeah.
This is my proposal, just to put on the table. I think we could benefit now from a work session if it's added, which probably would be fine with time, on, budget planning process. And then maybe we don't do anything this summer, but we take over the next, we don't cancel any meetings in this whole period when we normally haven't been meeting, and we can use those, to plan the process, go through each park, our own process plans, and discuss how to interact with each neighborhood. And then next summer, better prepared to have space, that maybe there's a National Get Outdoors Day in June, so maybe we could do something like that, and we focus on getting kiddos outside, interacting with the environment, and figure out how that works. And then I would offer, I don't know how this would fit, but we could talk about it. I I work for a public policy agency, I would be more than happy to help with like survey. We wanted to, send out a survey to a local area community or whatever that looks like.
And I will let you know with, we've gone through some of that conversation at the council level, kind of tying it into a more global approach, not just parks, but I think it will still kind of get you where you need to be from a survey perspective. Some of that stuff has been tabled only because we want to get the new city manager on board. Those interviews will be taking place next week with the final 4. I assume an offer will be extended and a hire will be made by the end of July. And then that new manager would be in place probably, again, depending on their situation and their notice, sometime end of August, beginning of September is kind of the thought. And so rather than start a project or review results, we kind of want that person to be in place to then be able to steer the ship, so to speak, instead of saying, hey, we did all this work, here, finish it. So that's part of the reason why that's been delayed a little bit. Council did just appoint a firm to do a sewer rate study specific to helping the council budget for those things. I'm not sure how valuable a work session on the actual budgeting and the process would be for you guys just because of your limited role with the budgeting. The overall concept I could see having value, kind of like what I briefly summarized for you now. Yep. But I definitely think there's value in reviewing a park. And that's kind of where we went when we were at the park was, here's what we got. What do we think we can do here? What's feasible for maintenance? What are people, are people really going to come out and use it if there's not a tree? Those kinds of concepts. So you could still do your traveling parks meetings this year, but make that one of your agenda items is to review that park you're in. This is what's here. Where's the nearest place to park? Because most of our parks, with the exception of a couple that have parking lots, are what are considered neighborhood parks, which are only walking or biking to. So that you also have to take in consideration. We have a little bit of a challenge with 2 of our parks right now where we're trying to facilitate bathrooms. But with a bathroom comes the serviceability of that bathroom. And so I'm running into a little bit of an issue just because of the size of the sidewalk that was put into those 2 places. So we have an enclosure, no bathroom. But it's challenges like that how do we overcome them? What's the best way to handle them? There's not a lot of flowers in our parks. You've done a great job with our square from a different role that you play, but we don't have a lot of flowers in our parks. It could be adopt a park. People have that and plant flowers with your kids, but you have to manage them because a lot of times what I see from my desk is people have a lot of really great ideas and nobody wants to implement them and nobody wants to follow through on them. So I have this really great idea. Okay, Dennis, Public Works, now just do it. Well, he's already got a full-time job, so he can't now babysit all the flowers that were planted at all the parks. So it has to be a follow-through plan. And but I think that's a great idea. In a perfect world, this is what we'd like to see. How are we going to get there? Who's going to do what? And truly make it a work session where you're just talking about it. And then at the end of it, you have your proposal. And then the next agenda, you can actually take a motion on it. This is what we recommend. Or maybe it's after you've done 4 or 5 sessions at different places. And then you come back with your overall. But really, whatever Parks Commission would like to see, that recommendation needs to go to council at the very latest, probably the October meeting. And it's already July. So, again, for 2020, and we have a really good public works staff and tree board and chamber and everybody, so they're already kind of looking out for these things. Randy is already saying, okay, in this park, and now that's how we got to the infrastructure of things. That's how we said, before we can ever have a playground, we have to fix the drainage at Lost Lakes. We'll have to have a drinking fountain. We'll have to have, utilities and amenities there. So those are kinds of the things that Public Works can help. We already know we need to do this first. So if you come back and you say, I want this, because there'll be a park up on the Hug Drive development that's going on. There'll eventually be a park up there that will, right? And Crossroads is going to have a couple parks and a couple ponds, and right. So what we've got now isn't just what we're going to have; it's going to be that too. And so we have to think about in what order do we do things. You know, you mentioned, you know, you have a playground 5 minutes away by walking or biking from Lost Lakes, but maybe Hug Drive that doesn't have any connectivity to town. Their nearest park is Big Creek. Maybe that actually preempts the people that have lived in Lost Lakes. I know that won't sit well with some people, but you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. It has to be a big picture of Polk City when you're doing that. And consider, I don't know, Crossroads parks probably won't come to fruition until 2021 at this point. But those are things to think about. Our current city manager, have you met him, our interim? Was he at the last parks meeting by chance? Okay. His name's Don Sandor. He joined us in April. He's been a plethora of information. He was in Pleasant Hill for 8 years before he retired. He was in Oskaloosa for 13 years. I probably got that wrong. But one of the things that he's implemented is council getting a capital improvement plan, a 5-year capital improvement plan, which Polk City hasn't been to that level yet. So in that budgeting process, instead of just worrying about 2020, well, what are we going to have to do in 2025? And there's going to be some major expenses come up. We desperately need a new city hall. We don't have enough parking. The facility's not large enough. There's just, you know, the police station, the fire station, all that stuff. What are we going to do? You know, Public Works hasn't hired a Public Works person in, well, I've been here for almost 5 years, and you haven't added any new people, but I know how many roads we've added, and I know how much water main and sewer. So those are things that have to be talked about. Equipment turnover, you know, being on a replacement plan. You know, trucks in Public Works should probably be replaced every 5 years. The fire trucks, the ambulances, instead of just going, oh, fire truck broke, I need a new one. So the CIP will come in very handy because it will allow the commissions and it will allow the council to foresee what it is. And those first initial numbers are going to be kind of scary. There's lots and lots and lots of projects specific to the planning and zoning world of development that are scary. New water tower, you know, new infrastructure, you know, all those things that federal regulations are changing. This is what we're going to have to now do to manage our water. We're going to have to buy more water. And all those things are being looked at. Schneider Engineering is, of course, our engineer of hire. So they're reviewing all the different projects. There's so on the other side of the Big Creek ponding area, there's also a Southside Drive. I don't know if any of you knew that was in the Polk City city limits. It's gravel currently. There's going to be a development that's going to eventually come to fruition that's north of that, and so gravel can't stay, so now the road's going to have to be paved. It's those kinds of things that, unless the council's being told about them, there's no way they're going to be able to plan for them. And so that CIP should come in handy. And so Don's trying to set up a plan to manage so that when the new manager's on staff, we'll be able to move that forward and kind of work more cohesively than we have in the past. But I think you're onto something there with the review of the parks and this is what we'd like to see, and then coming back, you know, after 3 or 4 meetings out and sitting down in here and then saying, okay, here's what we came up with. What's our number one priority? And even if you check them off slowly like that, I mean, I realize it's not going to suffice the general public, but at least you can say this is what we started with and this is the progress we're making. And if we want to get there sooner, then to Holly's point, that's where that fundraising comes in. It may take the city 5 years to get here, but with fundraising help, we might be able to do it in 2.5. So I think that would be helpful. Just my 2 cents.
Is everyone okay if we wait to do a meet and greet type thing? Yeah.
And remember, these are public meetings.
Right.
Come out and meet your commission. Right. I'm telling you on the camera. You know, but they're public meetings. Nobody is closing the door and saying you can't come in. Come out, talk to us, meet with us. And we can, I mean, you can do hey, we're holding our Parks Commission meeting at this park. come visit. Listen to what we're talking about. Provide input. You know, that's all very feasible stuff without having an official separate event. And then that'll give you time and Bridget time to finish RVTV and potentially provide some ideas and input on how the chamber can assist us with some of that going into next spring.
And I know most of our members weren't here when we last did meetings at Park, so it's helpful for everyone.
Yeah. Like, I didn't know where the linear park was. I still have to look on the map. Wait, which one is that? Or the Lakeside Park, which has a little mulch path in it now. It's super cute. Nobody ever goes off the sidewalk in Parker to meander through. It's really cute, actually. So those are some of the things that, again, I don't know that we want to do it when it's 100 degrees out, but or in the rain. We've done that before. It rained on you guys last time, didn't it?
I have to leave. No, I'm going to miss your thing, and I'm going to have to leave. But I would tell you though, I have a lot of groups in town. I have someone individually that wants to donate to something in Polk City. Yeah, and so those same groups are like, what can we fundraise for? They want to do something. So once you guys have an idea of what you want to do, I think you would have a lot of support from the groups in town here that would go gangbusters and be like, because $2,000 isn't going to do a whole lot, but then if this group raises $2,000 and this does $5,000 and someone does $500, I mean, you can pull and have a good chunk of money. And I was talking with Becky of this. I have tons of ideas, and I can't take it over as a chamber event per se, maybe for next year, but I would love to be involved in planning for it for next year. Most definitely. I've talked to a few business people too, and their businesses, yeah, they can't have their big name and donate $50,000 to something in Polk City, but they would love to host an activity or, something like that in a park. So.
Go.
Thank you.
And the arbor, $5,000 a year, so 2,000 is a lot to us.
So I think what you need to decide is where you want to meet in September. That's the first order of business. If you want to meet here, then that's fine. But if you want to meet in a park and kind of experience it,
We met here.
August. So.
or August. Did I say September? I read September on the August.
If we have an October.
Can we do 2 locations for our meeting?
You can't.
Well, we could just use that mulch, those two things are really close to each other, that mulch path and that.
You can have the meeting and adjourn, and then as a group, go. But the meeting has to start and stop in the same spot. Now, inclement weather aside, because there's going to be a note posted on the door, so if anyone were to show up to the meeting, then they would know where to go. And so if you tell them to go here and then it's not there, that creates frustration and a lack of transparency.
Yeah, park.
Now, which one?
I always forget which one's which, but what's the park on right next to that mulch path?
Parker Boulevard there, that one's up there.
Yeah.
That's linear.
Yeah,
linear
that's linear.
park.
Yeah, okay. I mean.
Or the one with the playground?
Yeah.
The one with playground's Leonard.
Leonard Park.
Yeah.
Leonard
one with the little mulch
linear
trail
park
on
is
here.
the mulch path on
Yeah.
Parker Boulevard at Phillips.
Right next.
Between Phillips and
That way we see both of those. Like
And your challenge is going to be parking, just so everyone knows, because the closest parking would be on Maple or Leonard, which is something. I mean, one of the phases was that there'd be a playground or a parking lot there at some point, and that hasn't come to fruition for a variety of reasons, but those kinds of things. Phases or the comp plan to keep in mind is just that. At the time it was designed, this was what was suggested to be the future thing, but until actually council acts on it and says this is what is going to happen, it's just an idea. So
Do you get complaints on Leonard Park and park or not from residents either?
No, because most of the people that go there again are on the bike trail, or they're people that live nearby. Because it's amenities. I mean, my kids love going there because of the fish thing.
Yeah.
They call it the fish park.
Yeah.
Right. We have a perfectly good park in Marina Cove, but they want to ride our bikes all the way over to Leonard Park so they can play on the fish thing. So, I think the majority of the people are using it as a stop. The tetherball was a big thing for a while there. The only complaint I ever had was actually someone on Maple Drive was complaining because somebody had like a little meet and greet there. So we may hear a complaint if we all park our cars there, but
If I could just, one nice thing about Leonard Park is that if you were to meet at Leonard Park, you can still see Linear Park. You can also still see the gas line park that connects between Parker Boulevard and the bike trail, which is eventually going to connect. And that's like 80 foot by 600 foot space that needs something at some point in time.
And I think we're calling them the wrong thing.
And that may be, Jim. And again, I know we've got some aerial photos. We could, you could meet at Leonard Park and talk about these other parks as well, because the gas line park is going to be online next year as far as park space for us.
We call that one Woodhaven.
Woodhaven Park, okay.
And then the one that's the mulch path is Lakeview.
Lakeview Park, okay, Lakeview. My bad.
We don't even have a Linear anymore.
Okay, Lakeview.
I think Linear at one point was what was proposed name, but we changed it to Lakeview. Because we try to name them what the development is, so that it's easy to find.
Yeah.
It's the Woodhaven Park in Woodhaven. It's the Leonard Park. Well, because it's right next to Cliff Leonard's house.
Yeah.
But
everybody knows.
Right? But so a lot of the parks, that's how they got their name, was just whatever the development ended up being called.
You know that they.
Yes.
Right. I hope no. I like it all open.
You should buy it, Holly.
I should buy that.
You should.
And
Reserve
just
it.
never.
I would love to have that happen. Keep it as green space.
Green space, yeah.
I'll introduce you. Like,
Yeah. Well, he goes for it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Bring some cash.
Does everyone have the concept plan for the parks as well, the new members?
Was it in the parks book Becky gave you?
I'm looking right.
Like, I didn't create the book, and if it's not, we can get it out. Because I think the last concept plan, wasn't it dated like 2011? Looks like, wasn't it like 2011? The comp plan is a little different. It probably has future land use, but it's not specific.
2016.
Yeah. So I can just send it out in an email. And again, it's concept, so it can change. It's fluid. But I'll put down that we'll meet at Leonard, and then what we decide to do from there.
All right, and so we will table.
Thanks for trying to get the date for that, so it kind of keeps it apart.
Make it look good.
A little extra special.
Look at that. Such devotion.
All right, tree board.
Actually, I do have a report tonight, and I will not be at the August meeting. I do have a report tonight, and it's a bad news, good news, bad news Emerald Ash Borer report. The bad news is this is an Emerald Ash Borer that I found in Polk City. The good news is that it's dead. The bad news is that there's more. I've been giving EAB update reports to City Council for over 10 years now, and we all knew this was coming, and now it's here, and I found that on my own property. One of the seminars that I went to a number of years ago talked about the mortality rate of the ash trees. This is just a sketch that I made. Mortality on this side up to 100%, tree timeline on this side to 10%, or 10 years rather. And what they see typically after emerald ash borer is discovered is the first 2 years you'll have a little bit of mortality rate, but between about 2 and 8, every year you're going to see massive die off. And then by about year 8, you've already got 80 or 90% up gone. So the last couple of years, then they phase out the last few percent. But you're looking at a 10-year timeline here, but that's huge. I mean, that's a fair amount of time. But we're talking about lots and lots of ash trees. You're going to see it on the landscape as it comes around. In regards to the city, we've been treating the trees out at the sports complex and a few others around, I think, primarily. And did we treat some of them at the library? I don't think so.
No, we didn't.
I don't, but there's a few ash trees at the library, Miller Park, not the new library, old library, Miller Park. And they're not really high quality ash trees, and so we opt not to do the treatment on them. The treatments are an every 2-year program, and it costs money. Removal costs money, treatments cost money, and you just have to sort out how much you want to spend and where you can spend. The ash trees along the side of the sports complex were the first trees that the Arbor League planted some 25 years ago. And the city council agreed to spend the money on treatments for those trees for some length of time. That being said, we've already removed a couple of those trees down there that just didn't have good growth patterns. If we see that we've got bad growth patterns that doesn't justify, expending money every 2 years, we'll maybe, eliminate some of those trees as well. There are other ash trees on city property. There are far, far, far more ash trees on private property in Polk City. But again, the bad news is it's here. I've seen these in specimen jars in other places, but I found that on my own property. So
It's gonna be terrible. I mean, there's an ash tree every other house.
it's bad. Ash trees were very widely planted through the 70s, and they were great trees while they lasted. I've been to these seminars and seen pictures of before and after of tree-lined streets, and in 2 years they're all gone. And I mean, it was just like Dutch elm disease, which most don't remember, but I do. And it'll wipe out the landscape. It's going to cost a lot of money. It's going to change the landscape, and reality is we now have emerald ash borer in Polk City. So if you've got ash trees, and I've been in the part-time tree business for years, but anybody that I ever talked to about ash trees, I have said, you need to budget your money. Treat it or remove it. The sooner you do it, the better you're going to be. If it comes to removal, every year that they grow, they're going to cost more to remove. So talk to your neighbors and let them know. Ash trees are on their way out.
Are we trees the ones in the square?
I
We
don't
don't have
know that we have any
any
ash
ash
trees
trees
on the
over there.
square. There are no ash trees on the square.
Oh, okay. For some reason I thought we
And
had.
if there might be. I don't think so. I don't know if there's any ash trees on the square.
It is good to note there are several ash trees on Army Corps land all around Saylorville, though.
Mm-hmm.
And that will dramatically change the landscape that we have come accustomed.
Big time.
So, they're doing some overgrowth. I mean, obviously you've seen near the bike trail along Bridge Road, they're trying to fix some drainage. They're trying to be cognizant of, if anybody asks, trails that are near a trailhead or near a road are becoming more and more dangerous for people being out because it's close enough for bad guys to not have to go very far. So more and more you're going to see overgrowth and things like that all along the Neil Smith Trail, not just in Polk City, be sorted out some to kind of prevent that easy target. When you start getting farther into the trails and you're away from roads, bad guys don't want to go that far, I guess. So again, it's trying to remove the easy target. So there's multiple things going on kind of around that sports complex corridor. One's drainage, one was just bad trees, one was safety. But you're going to see a large, I think it's on the west side of the lake, right? Where the Army Corps has started tree removal,
They've
or was
done
it?
a lot of tree removal in Prairie Flower up here.
Okay.
They did a lot of ash trees.
For some reason, I was thinking it was the wet, like when you're leaving Polk City and you're kind of looking at that west bank, but I might have it backwards. But just in case you see some of that, that's part of it. Is they're trying to prepare.
I thought that was mainly dead over there.
Well, the stuff here by the sports complex on Bridge Road, that was a lot of dead fat pine trees taken up. And the Corps has done strategic removals of ash trees that will eventually be a hazard if they're in campgrounds and over buildings. But there are thousands of ash trees through the woods that will not be touched. Nature will take its course. That's my report. Emerald ash borers in Polk City.
Could have kept that one to yourself.
Excuse me?
I said you could have kept that one to yourself.
No, that's good news, bad. That's what it.
Thank you
That's
for
all I
your
got.
report. All right, staff report. You have anything?
No, I don't. Randy didn't really say to mention anything other than, I do want to say thanks to Holly for the flowers, the square, they look great. And, we're continuing our mosquito spraying right now. And has anybody in the parks had any good or bad experiences with mosquitoes or anything like that, or?
When they're making the rounds, Dennis, they have not been going down the Westwash.
They have not been going down.
The last couple times they've not been down. And
They get that.
drive down my closed off road there and start down there.
I usually back
Back
down.
The last time they went around, Westwash didn't hit. I had those problems.
Okay, you betcha.
Of course, the Four Seasons Festival is coming up. So staff will be very busy, all different departments in different manners, but Public Works takes the brunt of it, from ordering the signs to taking the delivery of the signs to placing the signs to working overtime to make sure everything goes off without a hitch. So, be extra special, nice to your Public Works guys. So that Four Seasons Festival takes a lot of work. Bridget and John Calhoun and all the volunteers on the festival committee, they do a lot. They take a brunt of that. But there's just beyond that, lots and lots of volunteers that come in and make the event seem like it was seamless and simple, right? Popped up one day and then it was gone in a couple days. It's magic.
Anything else from the commission, or do you have a motion to adjourn?
My motion.
Second. All in favor? Aye. All right, we will adjourn till August 5th at Leonard Park.
Do you think we should remove that?
I was just talking to Ken about that earlier, that red bud in the square. It budded, but it never leaked.
I think, oh, it may have been the winter. I mean, there were a lot of trees that just didn't survive long cold. It may very well.
It was
It was
beautiful last
so
year.
weird. It budded.
Yeah, it was
spring
budded,
and
because,
year,
yeah,
but-
Mike wanted me to take it down several months ago. I said, Mike, budding.
Yeah,
Let's
we
wait to
actually
see
talked
what
about
happens.
it. I think his plan was to try to get it out before the festival.
Yeah, Randy wants me to take it down, so you would